So I guess my first question is for every guest is, well, not necessarily a question, an invite to every guest to tell me a little bit about what you do.
I run an organisation called Inclusive Change. I started that organisation back in January 2020. And it was a result of, I'm going to be perfectly honest, and I'm going to open up with something that's usually quite, okay. I broke in 2019. So I pretty much broke, and I had been working at the University of Bristol and had a great career, not just at the university, but prior to that elsewhere. And I broke because my youngest child had got a diagnosis of autism. My eldest was already diagnosed as autistic, and I'm not sad about that. I never broke because of that. I broke because of the challenges and the being a woman in your 40s, looking after a family, trying to keep a job, trying to have a social life, being married, all of those kind of things.
Pressure.
They kind of fell. It just wasn't okay to do all of that. So I left work. So that was the one thing I thought that I can do without, is I left work. And I thought, I'm going to set up my own company and I'm going to work on my own terms. And so I did. So Inclusive Change is an organisation that focuses on change management, but also in a big way, neurodiversity, and helping organisations and individuals understand what this thing is called neurodiversity.
I love that. That's so important. Tell us about neurodiversity.
Yeah. Okay. So neurodiversity is, in its essence, we're all neurodiverse. Okay. The whole human population, we're all part of this neurodiverse world. Okay. And if you liken it to biodiversity, there's infinite possibilities of how we can all be, how we interact with the world, what that all means.
Got you.
But in terms of neurodiversity, and I particularly talk about neurodiversity in the workplace, you will find sometimes, and actually quite a lot now, 1 in 10 people are what we call neurodivergent, which means you might not process and see the world and experience the world in the same way that generally the rest of the population see the world. So what we would call neurotypical. So we start using words like neurodivergent, neurotypical, neurodiverse, gets a little bit confusing sometimes. But neurodivergent people are generally those people who might be autistic, might have ADHD, Tourette's, dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia. There's usually a few disses all around the place. So there's lots of things in there. But it's neurodiversity is understanding how we can support people in the workplace, in school, in other organizations, and taking into account this thing called neurodiversity and not being more inclusive about it. So hence, inclusive change.
Yeah, I love that, because talk about like the challenges that you've experienced, I guess, as both a mum and also in the employment world, how there's actually, bigger barriers for neuro.
Yeah, I talk a lot about something called the social model of disability. And a lot of people who are neurodivergent probably won't see themselves as disabled. It's just who you are. You're born like it.
Yeah.
It's just how we grow up and how we experience the world. So my son, for instance, who's nearly 16 and is taking GCSEs and is starting to think about the world of work, when I ask him, well, could you come and explain to people what it's like to be autistic? And he says, I can't really explain that because I can only tell people what my world is like and how I experience the world. So I can't say to anybody, oh, this is what it feels like to be autistic. I can tell them what it feels like to be me. But some of those big challenges that happen are things like stigma. Yeah. That comes through that social model of disability, people's perceptions, the way people might think about stereotypes, for instance. You'll also find things like one of the biggest problems, particularly with somebody who is autistic, is anxiety. Right. A big issue is anxiety. And it kind of comes as a package because you get anxious about lots of different things sometimes. Yeah. Other challenges might be if you are ADHD, and these are generalizations, you might find it difficult to focus. You might find it difficult to, you might have lots of things going on in your mind. And actually more recently, even my partner has started to say to me, Lucy, I think you maybe ought to think about how how you're doing things, because I am constantly having things in my mind that I can't stop. I don't stop thinking ever. And I've
Yeah.
always thought that's just normal.
Yeah.
Apparently it's not.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Some people sleep,
I was going to say, you kind of like surmised like my entire being, really. My whole mind is constantly pinging.
Yeah. Well, they do say that, in fact, there is evidence that entrepreneurs tend to be overrepresented in terms of neurodivergence. So a lot of entrepreneurs may be neurodivergent. So that could be dyslexic. So Richard Branson's dyslexic.
Yeah.
Jamie Oliver. People who are autistic, people like Elon Musk, Chris Packham, Anne Hegarty. And then there again, people like Melanie Sykes, who's just come out as autistic because she's just found out herself, and she's in her 50s and she's just found out that she's autistic. And as I said earlier, her experience of the world is her normal. And she didn't realize that any of that was different to the way anybody else felt.
Yes.
Until it kind of gets pointed out. And mostly it will come if your child is diagnosed as neurodivergent or autistic, and you might start to look at yourself and kind of go, oh, right, that might explain why that happened in my life and I didn't cope very well.
And I suppose that's the important thing, isn't it? Because I'm sat here going like, okay, so, did Melanie Sykes have a tough life? I don't know. I don't know her, but it is, finding out something like that at 50, 60 years old, do you then try to experience life in a different way? What do you do? Yeah.
For me, and I've been a trainer with an organisation called the Curly Hair Project for about 4 years now, and I provide training in and around autism, particularly about females who are autistic.
Okay.
And I provide training for that organisation, and mostly I meet women who come up to me and say exactly that. I found out I was autistic in my 30s, 40s, 50s. There's one person who came and said, I'm 74 and I've just found out I'm autistic. You feel different and you have trouble sometimes fitting in, might have trouble with social interaction, communication, understanding things, might find things overwhelming in terms of sensory stuff. But nobody's ever said, oh, that's because you're neurodivergent. It's just about that light bulb and that realization and incredible empowerment now, knowing the reason why you might have struggled with certain aspects of your life.
Yes, that totally makes sense. Wow, it's fascinating. Fascinating. What do you enjoy most about the work that you do?
Helping people, I think, and helping people understand and making a difference. So for me, one of my big passions in drivers is that I want to make a difference for the next generation of young people coming up through school and moving into the workplace. Being able to support and help organizations open up their world and talk about neurodiversity so that it becomes completely acceptable, completely inclusive by the time that next generation comes through to the workplace is kind of my passion and driver. And so that's one of the things I really enjoy.
That's fantastic. And one of the reasons why we are so happy to have you on Beyond the Hashtag is because you're purpose driven, because you are using that deep drive to do something and make a difference to the communities that you work with and live in.
I kind of feel sometimes that I could sit back and go, oh, everybody needs to help me. Oh, poor me. And when I started this conversation with you and I talked about being broken, it wasn't because of any of diagnosis or that element of my life. It was just because sometimes you break and sometimes you can't cope with everything in life. However, I'm really positive about stuff. And actually, I don't want to sit back and go, you all need to help me. I need the council to do this and the school to do this. Yeah. I sat back and went, how do I make a difference? And how do I make this change happen? Because nobody else is doing it, so I'm going to.
100%. That's really admirable. Love it. Okay, so obviously we're a social media and comms agency. It would be silly of us to not discuss social media. What part does social play in your business?
A big part in my business, actually. It's an interesting part. So I have a number of different facets to my business. So I run Inclusive Change. As part of that, I have a retail outlet called Your Village Shop, which is a training environment for young people and adults who are neurodivergent, who want to come and get a work experience with us. However, in order to run that shop, in order to build the audience and drive customers to that shop, I need to be on social media. So Facebook is a big part, because that's our demographic. That's the Facebook in particular is one that we use to drive sales to our shop, to encourage community, to talk about what we're doing, to get traction. And I find most of the people who use and are our social media followers, something I've learned in the past 6 months, they don't necessarily always interact with us, but they lurk. And what happens is I'll put something out on Facebook, and then they'll come to my shop and they'll go, I saw this on Facebook, but they come in and buy it. And they're like, oh yeah, I've seen you for months. I'm like, okay. So there's this secret world of people that follow me on the internet that don't ever interact with me.
And that's reassuring, isn't it? I think that's, I think there's a lot of people that do that demographically. But I think that demonstrates the ROI of social. We were talking about this on another episode about like, I think a lot of people poke holes in social media going like, well, what's the return on investment going to be from the offset? And you're like, well, there's probably not a lot at the offset actually. And this is a long-term strategy. And you know that that's delivering you some return. So you can continue to do it. And if in 7 months' time another person comes in and says, I saw you on social media, well, that's the very reason why you should be using it.
Yeah, absolutely. I use other elements as well. Twitter is something that I've been part of since 2013, 2014. So
amazing.
Way back when.
Are you quite active on there?
I was, and I'm not as much now, but I was. But I found Twitter is quite useful to make connections with people. And then I think, do you know what? I'm going to reach out to that person. And so I'll either reach out to them via Twitter, or I'll contact them directly. Twitter has changed over the years, I'd probably say. It's a little bit more aggressive sometimes.
Yeah, I think it has that reputation.
Yeah, and sometimes I just have to scroll through because I cannot get down that rabbit hole of I can't do it sometimes.
Well, I really enjoyed the list feature on Twitter, and like creating my own curated feed actually. So actually pulling those people that I want to read tweets and content from and sticking them in a list. That way I can still follow loads of people and still have them there and really grow, but actually just really hone in on the content that I just want to look at from the people that I admire. And that's always one of my piece of advice actually in terms of health and well-being is everyone to remember that you pick your feed, you decide who you see. And I think that's really important when you look at negative comments. If you don't like it, get rid.
Interestingly, thinking about generations and thinking about the people I want to work with and the young people that I want to work with, more and more young people are actually ditching social media and ditching smartphones because they just don't want it. They've had enough. I personally think that there's a bit of a revolution that might happen in terms of digital media, particularly with that generation, where they will go, that's not where I want to be anymore. That doesn't represent me anymore. And I'm not experiencing real life.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's going to be potentially a shift more towards people being more responsible or taking control of their feeds and what they do and what they post and what they see. And I think other channels like your TikTok and Reels and things that, and messenger apps, things that actually offer a much more intimate experience that's one-to-one with people is really important. Okay, what's your relationship like personally with social media?
I tend not now to put too much on personally. However, my business and my passion and purpose are kind of very much linked to me as an individual. And so the stuff I put on social media for my business is very much me. So it's not a facade. It's not just, inclusive change is this and we do this. It's usually that's what I'm doing and that's me and that's what my values are telling you all about. So personally, and I do get sucked into it. It's a time sucker, I must say.
It really can be, can't it? But I think that's a really good point you make there about the whole intersection of you as a person and your company. Because we've been talking about this on previous episodes about content that works. So again, rather than thinking about likes and followers and what's the best hashtags and how many do I use, actually the conversation needs to remain, what's the best type of content to be sharing? And a lot of people are talking, in this industry, we always talk about that authenticity. So what's the best what content works for you the best?
Sometimes it's stuff that's really raw and really like, I'm just want to talk about this, or
Yeah.
this is an experience I've had today. LinkedIn is I've noticed LinkedIn has very much changed, and rather than just being pure business organizations, there's a lot more personality and a lot more authenticity on LinkedIn.
Yeah, we were talking about this with another guest the other day, definitely.
Yeah. And I just think that's that kind of content so I mentioned Your Village Shop, which is our retail outlet, and I can post stuff on there all the time. Look, come and see, we're selling fabulous cheesecake, or we've got this fabulous artwork in the store today, come and meet the artist. No. And people might see it, people might come along, but actually when I put posts out that are a bit more personal, or asking for interaction, or things that mean something to people, that's when I get the best interaction.
Right.
The best interactions I've got actually are usually around things like sustainability, zero waste products, things that are making a difference. And I quite often will intersperse it with neurodiversity. We're doing this. We've created this project. We're doing that. Get in touch. That's when I see a lot more interaction.
So you're actually creating value, aren't you? You're promoting stuff that people care about.
Yeah.
And you're probably doing it in a way that people want to read, because actually,
I'd like to think so.
You're talking about stuff that is going to make a difference to somebody's life.
Yeah.
And I think any business that's promoting on themselves on social media needs to consider the customer journey, don't they? The journey that someone's going to go on with you. And what I always ask myself, like, will our audience care about this post?
And I'd agree with that.
Yeah, and I talk about that with our clients as well. I was like, will your customer or your audience, because your audience might even be your customer yet, will they care about the thing that you're about to press post on?
Yeah, because otherwise there's a lot on the internet, they'll just scroll on through.
Exactly. If they don't post it, because the world has enough stuff online and enough scrolling content to scroll through. Like, make sure yours counts. So how do you plan? How do you plan prep? For your social? Do you? No. Is it on your to-do list constantly?
It's constantly on my to-do list. And as I mentioned earlier, I have a brain that never stops. So I usually wake up very early and I start work on things like that very early in the morning. And it will be ping, I've got a great idea. Right, we're going to do this. My challenge, I do think, actually, is that I am very controlling around what we publish and what we put out on social media. Okay. And so in terms of planning, I have other people that work with me, and I'd love to be able to go, you do this, you do all this, but then it never comes out quite right. And so my planning goes a little bit awry, because I'm like, right, okay, we've got a 6-week plan. I want this, and this to happen. And then those 6 weeks fly by, and 2 days before the event or 2 days before something, nothing's happened. This is why I keep control of everything. Or they'll do something. A famous one in our team is Wimbledon last year. We got a lovely lady who works with us, and she was doing some social media posts, and she put out about strawberries for Wimbledon. But the problem was we didn't have any strawberries in the shop. So it's like, could you just check that we've got strawberries in the shop before? And that was just a learning exercise to be like, okay, well, I needed to help her understand, right, well, there is a link between what we're doing and what we can, the expectations that we can live up to and things like that. So
exactly. I think that's the other thing, isn't it? Like planning can be, using a spreadsheet, planning can be having a meeting, planning, but it really just start at the top with that consideration of what are we saying, what do we want to do, what do we need to fill in the gaps with, but also tying it up full circle and going, okay, we've planned, we've prepped, we've drafted, let's just make sure we sense check all the stuff before we press post.
Yes.
Because once it's out there, it's very difficult to bring it back in. Yeah. And I hate deleting stuff. Like, I'm not a deleter on socials as much as I can help it.
No, I'd leave it there sometimes and just kind of go, I'm owning that mistake.
Own it, just correct it. Although I did hear just this morning, little side note there, that Twitter have confirmed they're going to be testing an edit button.
Oh, interesting.
So that's just like years in the making.
So working with other people and planning for me is quite a challenge. But usually in my head, I've got a plan. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, right, okay, I'm going to do a blog about this, but I'm not going to promote it yet because I'm not ready to. That's not the right timing to do it. I've written it, it's published, but I'm not going to shout about it and things like that. So
I've
yeah,
got so many blogs in my head, so many blog posts that are desperate to be written.
Yes, absolutely. So
they will be there. They'll be there somewhere at some point. Yeah. Having that extra support is massive help, even if that's someone just to bounce ideas off, somebody to write up what you're thinking, somebody to do the bits that you don't like, whether that be the visual, whether that be the writing, whether that be the scheduling.
I think that's really important, because we can be great at the core things that we do.
Yeah.
So I have a friend who, she runs an equine therapy business, and she's brilliant at horses and therapies, and that's her core strengths and her core skills. But in order to grow a business, she feels, I need to be on social, I need to be doing this, and I need to have that. And so it takes her away from what she can add value with herself, because she's spending hours and hours trying to work out what looks good on her website, or what a good post looks like, and worrying about likes and follows. And that's not her core.
No. And also they don't necessarily matter.
Yes.
You know? So let's stop worrying about likes and follows. Let's just worry about creating good content and telling your story on a platform that you're comfortable with, where most of your audience is hanging out. Although I always say,
they will come with you.
Exactly. And I do always say, I think any business can make any platform work. You've just got to give people a reason to meet you there.
Yeah.
Lucy, thank you so much for being on Beyond the Hashtag with me. It's been amazing talking to you. And hearing about all the wonderful work that you do, and hopefully we'll catch up soon. Lucy, take care. See you soon.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.